Hello and welcome to Coffee with Dr. Carla. I'm Dr. Carla and I have Emily with us today, and we're really excited that you're here. Our goal is to talk about mental health related issues and the stigma surrounding them. And today we're going to talk about suicide and suicidal ideation and those attempts. And I have to confess that when I went back to school for counseling, and they were teaching us, like various things, but, the one in particular that I remember is like when you first meet a client and you're doing that intake and you're asking all these questions, one of the items on there was about different risks. And one of them is like suicidal ideation, homicidal ideation, self harm, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And apparently, it's a trend in the master's programs that every student is afraid to say it because they are convinced that if you say the word suicide or suicidal or suicidal ideation, that you're going to give that person the idea to do it. Because up until that point, they never thought about doing it.
Okay.
And our professors were pretty blunt, like, that's dumb. Get over yourselves. Be direct about asking this question, right? Because if you don't, you could miss out and somebody's life can be lost because of it. And so, thankfully, I learned that lesson. And so I do ask very bluntly. And hopefully, I teach my interns to be very blunt about it as well. But at the end of the day, it is kind of like this big, hairy secret that people don't really want to talk about. And I know that because we've worked together before. So I also know that you've had your own run in with suicidal ideations and attempts.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, would you like to share a bit?
Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think for me, I attempted earlier this year in March. Um, it took a long time for me to get that to that point. I think I have always struggled with self harm. I struggled with that in high school after I was assaulted. And I didn't really tell anyone.
What did self harm look like for you?
Cutting.
Okay.
I cut on my thighs actually, because
Were they deep cuts? Were they shallow cuts? I mean, what? So when you think about those days, because I mean, self harm cutting is definitely along the lines of uh, being at risk, right? So
yeah,
so while
absolutely.
you're not trying to kill yourself, what were you telling yourself you were trying to do?
I couldn't control the things that were going on around me, so I
Okay.
felt out of control physically and mentally.
All right.
So for me, self harm was more of like, this is your control. This pain right here is what you can control.
I can decide whether or not it happens. I can decide how often it happens, how deep it might be,
Exactly.
what I used to do. Okay.
Yes.
All right.
So I started out with just like the regular razors,
Okay.
um, like your
The razor blades.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And then my dad actually works at like as a mechanic, so he has like those actual like those long razors, like these ones.
Okay.
And I use those as well. Um, and it happened for I would like to say like a year or 2 years before my friend made me go and tell the counselor at school.
Okay.
And the counselor basically said, either you tell your parents or I tell your parents. You got to figure it out right now. And from that point on, with that interaction, I was like, okay, I'm never telling anyone anything ever again. Like, it
Because
was
you just
very,
ratted me out and right. Yeah.
very, like, the experience, it was just, like, not a good experience either. You know what I mean?
Right. Even though it was the right thing to do.
Right. The way that they went about
Yep.
it is, like, very, so I've actually, Katrina has talked to me a lot about this because she had no idea. When I actually attempted, she's like, I didn't even know you were suicidal or used to self harm. Because I did self harm in between those times of like the second time I got sexually assaulted last year
Okay.
and to when I attempted suicide. I was self-harming in between that. Um,
So you
and
were even hiding it from your own therapist.
yes. And
The
Katrina's
thought
like,
was what? If I tell her, what would happen?
I'm going to get in trouble, or I'm attention seeking. This is invalidated. Like, you're literally just doing this for attention. All of the, like, the stigmas of suicide, and, you know, like,
Yeah.
especially, like, listen, I love my parents very, very much. They're amazing. They have done amazing with my mental health. I was the middle child. So, like, a lot of the things that I used to do, they're like, oh, it's Emily. She's just getting attention. She wants attention, you know?
Right.
And so I grew up and I was like, all of these things, like, even my mental health now, I'm like, am I doing this for attention? And,
Oh, even questioning taking good care of yourself.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, absolutely. And I was like, Katrina really brought up actually our last session, which was yesterday. She was like, Emily, if you're doing it for attention, why are you doing it where one, no one can see you, no one knows what's happening? You're doing this by yourself at night or in the shower, or and you're hiding it,
Right.
right? And like again with the suicidal ideation and attempting suicide, I was by myself the entire day. And I was actually like out by we live where there's a bunch of like ponds and water, and so I was by water and I was by myself and I did it. And I ended up calling the ambulance, to be honest with you. It took about,
Because there was nobody there
yeah,
who even knew that this was going on.
yep. Um, so about 2 hours in, I was like, I don't want to die, you know? It was just this feeling of numbness that I had been really struggling with after. I mean, I had situation after situation last year. It was like I had been sexually assaulted, and then COVID hit, and I got COVID. My mom was in the hospital for about 6 weeks. Went back. It was really
It was a
bad.
lot. Yeah.
I was in nursing school, and you know that situation. The nursing school is just not very gracious when it comes to sickness and being sick. Um,
Yeah.
so that was a whole situation. One of the teachers at the school like accused me of being suicidal over a test grade. That was awful. Like, I felt like I was being honest with them about my mental health, and then they're like, "Well, you failed the test, so you're probably suicidal." And I'm like, "What is going on?" Like,
Yeah.
and then
So much for these caring professions, huh?
right, and that's my thing. Like nursing school, like you would think there would be a little more grace with when it comes to health, and it wasn't,
Especially during a pandemic.
and
Yeah.
especially during a pandemic. And then when COVID hit and I got it, I had to go home, and this is before we like finished
Yeah.
EMDR. So then I was having flashbacks all the time. On top of it, I had a bunch of medication changes. I found out like I had PTSD, ADHD, MDD, GAD,
Yeah.
all
Right.
of that. This is a whole list,
Yeah.
right?
Giant alphabet soup. Yeah.
Exactly. So I'm sitting there and I'm like, this is awful, right? So when we talked about the sexual assault and having that out of body experience, I ended up like disassociating a lot.
Right.
So that's something that I've also struggled with a lot within the past few. And I think for me, the disassociation and not wanting to deal with everything else going on, I was like, well, I'd rather feel nothing than feel all of this.
Yeah. Turn everything off. Right.
Right.
And the problem is you can't turn off some and not others. So once the switch goes down, it's like a blackout. You're done. Right. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. So I had been feeling numb for about 2 months, 3 months. And I was like, I just don't want to feel numb anymore. That was my thought. Like when I attempted by taking pills, I was sitting there and I was like, it was a beautiful day. I had been sketching. I read a book outside. I was by a pond, and I was like, I don't feel anything.
Right. Everything should, I mean, it was seemingly an idyllic scenario, or a set of
Yes,
scenery, right? And yet what you were feeling was not congruent or didn't match up with
exactly.
that. Yeah.
So I was like, I'm done. I'm done. And I did it. And again, I waited 2 hours, which by that time I was seeing things and, like it was crazy. I was hallucinating really bad. So I ended up calling 911 and they transferred me 2 times
Wow.
before. And I'm like, I'm literally trying, like, I'm dying right now.
Yeah.
And they're like, wrong, this isn't the right area. Let me transfer you.
Okay, so I'm about to die. Yeah. Oh, wow.
Yeah, so luckily, the third person that I got transferred to, he was like, this isn't the right place. I'm gonna stay on the line with you. Keep talking to me. I'm gonna send, like, get this figured out. And then the forest park, like, not police, but like they were for, whatever it is. He came up and he was like, hey, like, and just sat and talked to me and like was like, okay, an ambulance is coming, like, I'm, whatever. And they were really, like, the people in person, wonderful, amazing, um and I spent 3 days in the ICU and then went to a mental health like inpatient for a couple days and came back home.
Okay.
um
So we've got all of this going on,
yes.
and again, this, the thing I love about, my time with people who come and are willing to talk is there's so much to talk about. But okay, so I'm sure there's plenty of people who can resonate with the fact that they've been there.
Yeah.
They've been in that place. Um, what made the difference? What allowed you to get from this, place of being shut off and giving up? What helped you shift things around?
My support system, truly, and making a plan. So really, like, after that happened, we really hit deep into EMDR, and that was a crazy, like, helpful experience because that was one less thing off my load.
Sure.
Right,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
sexual assault, having to be home,
Right.
all of that, like,
I can now go into my own bedroom. Yeah. Yeah.
exactly,
I
like,
can
I
sit in my own bed. Yeah. Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, and just having that experience, but also just having that big support system. Like, my mom and dad have really stepped up. My mom is amazing. She calls me at least like once a day and is like, hey, how are you doing? Like, really, like, how are you doing?
Oh,
And
that's
I'm like,
good.
Mom, thank you. Like, I literally cry because I'm like so thankful for my mom and like how supportive, and my dad too, obviously. But um, my younger brother is actually the person. He's like, if you need anything, you call me.
Okay.
He's like, I will always pick up. So my younger brother has been amazing. And just like having that experience of people that are just behind you, like, I know you're struggling with this, but I'm here for you. And like, and that's just amazing cuz, like, again, when you're feeling all of this and when I was feeling all this, I felt alone,
Right.
right? Like, I don't want to seem like I'm just seeking attention or doing so. I would deal with it on my own. And knowing that I don't have to deal with it by myself was probably the biggest thing that I've learned.
Okay. So, unfortunately, we need to start wrapping up. But I think the idea that you're not alone, right? The mere fact that you shared your story when so many people don't, right? So, thank you. Um, but I think about those people who are like, okay, well, that's her. She has a great support group. She's got this, but that's not me.
Mm.
What piece of advice might you give that person to help them just bring it out of the dark and into the light, to help them tell that just that one person, right?
Hmm. As scary as it might be, you can always get help. You always can. And again, know that you aren't alone in the sense of like, there are people that have gone through that. And even if it's not the same experience or same thing, like just taking the first step and taking the leap is the scariest part. But then your eyes get open to like, wow, like there are other people that are struggling that can help me, that can, and just being able to do that for yourself. Because I know that for me, the scariest part was like telling people who, like what happened to me or everything like that. And ever since then, I've had like people that come out and like, wow, like thank you for sharing. Like I've had a similar experience, or so like
All of a sudden you realize, oh wait, you did? Wow. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, and like you opening up might be a first step for someone else opening up. And that is my biggest thing. Like, that's why I'm so able to share with like sexual assault and suicide and everything, because I know that if I tell my story, someone else might be strong enough to tell theirs.
Yeah. And I'm going to just add the fact that, you may not think that you have people in your corner that you know. And, that's something, that's something completely different. But there's also the suicide hotline. And we'll make sure that that goes in the comment section. I do know that nationally it's going to be 988. Illinois is rolling it out to be active in 2022. I think they're looking at summer of 2022, so we still got a little bit more time before that real simple 988 hits. But in the meantime, the suicide hotline is there, and those folks are professionally trained. They will work with you. They will talk to you, and so if you don't think there's anyone in your personal circle that could help you out, there are professionals who can help you out. So thank you again for being vulnerable and sharing, on a
Absolutely.
difficult topic. So remember, you can change your thoughts and discover your potential and transform your life by focusing on your overall well-being. So until next time, continue working on being the best you possible. Goodbye, everybody.